All right.
Fantastic. All right, thank you, Lee. Welcome everybody to our final session slot of the day. This is using data for continuous improvement, and it's about using QM data, using your own institutional data, and really looking, for example, at things like the efficacy of your QM implementation plans. So my name is Dr. Bethany Simunich. I'm QM's Director of Research and Innovation, and I am joined today by Dr. James Lani. He is the CEO of Intellectus Statistics, and he's going to introduce himself a little bit more later and also tell you more about Intellectus. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So part of what I wanted to share today are some things that QM uses data for our own internal continuous improvement. If you're ever curious, does QM collect data? What data do we collect? How do we use it? Well, we use it in a variety of ways. So shown here are just some examples. One way is to inform the QM rubric and the revision of the QM rubric. So if any of you have ever been on the rubric revision committee, if you have, go ahead and give me a nod in the chat. I served on that the last time around, and it is a lot of work, a lot of thinking, a lot of collaborating. It's pretty much a year-long project. And though there's Julie, of course, Julie. Hi, Julie Hamlin. One of the things that we do prior to that is we analyze our own internal data. So for example, what standards are most often missed? What standards are most often met? And that can provide us some insight, for example, into, let's say that a standard is frequently not met upon initial review. Maybe the annotation needs to be expanded or a little bit more explicit, or there's something else going on there that the rubric revision committee might want to investigate. Something else that we look at is inter-rater agreement and certified reviews. So for any of you that are peer reviewers or master reviewers, you know that it's majority rules. Not everybody has to agree, and that also respects the subjectivity and the individual perspective of our faculty and our reviewers when they're taking the student perspective. But we look at that inter-rater agreement, because if we find that, for example, some standards really don't have a lot of agreement across reviews, again, it's something for us to look at. Perhaps there's something in the wording of the standard or something else we need to examine there. We also look at it in terms of QM-focused research. So for example, if you ever wondered, especially with the remote pivot and the pandemic, and you have a lot of classroom-based or face-to-face faculty that are now engaging in professional development for online learning, including QMPD, and if you ever wondered, well, is this going to pay off, beyond this time, or do they take or transfer any of that information or that knowledge back to their face-to-face teaching and their face-to-face classrooms? Yes, they do. We had a QM-focused specific research project on that, and you could click on the link on the slides to learn more. And if you weren't already aware, all these slides are up for you on the website, and that includes the clickable link. There's also a takeaway sheet for this that's going to include that information as well. Another question that we asked, and this was from a recently published article that we authored along in collaboration with several of our research colleagues and also Dr. Kay Shattuck, do institutional reviews impact subsequent official reviews? Spoiler alert, yes. So for those individuals that engage in institutional reviews and they get some feedback from that, in some cases they may make revisions to their course before they put it up for a formal review. Those courses then met a formal QM review above and beyond what courses that did not have that institutional or informal review had. So what is the difference though between data collection and data analysis? I hear a lot where institutions or individuals say, well, I'm doing research on something. I'm doing this and it's research. And most often it's actually not research, it's data collection, which is good too. It's very useful. So you might be collecting things like simple counts in terms of attendance for workshops. And that's data collection. It's something that we need to do. It's something that most of our institutions do in some capacity or another. But that's a little bit different than going towards data analysis. So data analysis is when we actually do something with that data that we've collected. We either use it to answer a question or we explore what's there in a variety of ways. But it's the analysis portion that really helps us to understand what's going on there. And we also really need a good knowledge lens so that we could approach appropriately interpret that analysis. So data can be reported very easily, but data analysis requires not just, some special thinking and training, but also some specialized software. So that is how I personally got connected to Intellectus. Probably like many of you, when I was in graduate school, I used one of the big stats software packages that my institution had. So I was trained on SPSS, for example, and I used that for many years because I was embedded within an institution. However, I did at some point land at an institution that did not have an institutional subscription to SPSS. And that's when I realized, wow, I'm going to have to find some statistical analysis software that I can use, that fits my budget, fits my needs. And that carried over to when I joined Quality Matters last year. We needed an internal software to use. SPSS is a little bit more than we need. We have a very small research department here, 3 individuals, and then we collaborate with faculty researchers and ID researchers all across the country and some internationally as well. So we needed something that was a good fit for us. And truthfully, I invited James to join me today because I truly believe in this software. It is a dream to use. It was something that was very affordable for us. And it also had some really good additional features. So with that, I'd like to give James an opportunity to introduce himself a little bit more and talk about Intellectus.
Sure. Hi, all. James Lani here. So yeah, I'm the CEO of Intellectus Statistics. I, like Bethany, was brought up on SPSS, was kind of the go-to. And we developed a statistics application for non-statisticians and non-computer science folks. So if you love syntax, SPSS is probably, or SAS are probably terrific. But we wanted to really, you can execute on lots of different kinds of analyses, but it actually gives you lots of different types of support to help that non-statistician answer questions. Like not only describe, you talked about data collection and then doing something with the data, for sure, you may want to not only describe your data, but say, hey, what's the relationship between reviews and completed professional development? Or predict, hey, gosh, if I keep moving along this trajectory, what is going to be happening down the pike? So analyses can do lots of things and answer questions about relating things and predicting things. And anyway, we're happy to have the application and to have people use it and answer their questions.
Wonderful. And one of the best features of Intellectus, and I think James will show you this when he shows you a live demo, is, if you know statistics already, if you've been through the classes, if you're a more seasoned researcher, I hate the fact that I have to then, put on my parentheses and everything in order to write out the output report. Intellectus does that for you. It spits it out. So, again, unless you love to write all of those things in the precise way that we need to, that really does save you some time and save you some steps there. All right, so let's talk about using QM data and combining that with your institutional data as well. So why is data analysis important? For one big point, you really want to do look at the efficacy of your efforts. So for most of us, and I was embedded within 2 institutions, and I used QM at both of those institutions. I was the Quality Matters coordinator, and I'm also the former co-state lead for QM Ohio. So we had a lot of data, but we also had a lot of initiatives that we were trying to move forward with QM. We wanted quality assurance and online learning. So we had all of this data, and we were trying to match that to the goals, our implementation plan, our institutional strategy. And it was my job to report back to administration, for example, that they were making a good investment, not just financially, but also with faculty time. Or if instructional designers were pursuing professional development, that it was a good use of their time as well. So determining the efficacy of your efforts. Are things working? Is the implementation moving forward? Are we reaping some benefits and rewards? That's very important. It's very important to show all of your stakeholders that you're moving forward with your implementation plans and that some things are paying off as well. It also allows you then to see a more full picture of your QM implementation and progress. So doing a simple count, for example, of number of certified reviews just gives us one piece of data, but that doesn't tell us maybe other things that might be important to your institution, like how many faculty are trained, do they have higher self-efficacy now for online teaching? So questions such as that. And it can also help you make data-driven decisions moving forward, which is really what you want to do. So looking just for a second at QM data, and go ahead and pop in the chat if you are a QMC. Give me a yes if you're a QMC at your institution. Okay. Hi, Rachel. Okay. I love when I see familiar names. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so lots of QMCs. Okay, so for my QMCs, I'm talking to you for this slide. As the QMC, you have institutional data that is available to you when you log in within your QMC role. One on the picture that I have shown here on the slide, using reports to answer some of your key questions there. Professional development questions, course reviews, role holders. This is from the presentation that research colleague Beth McMahon did for QM Connect LX. It is linked in your takeaway handout. Why did I do that? Because if you're a QMC and you use that QM data, you know that there is a lot of data in there available to you. And there's also a lot of different types of reports that you can run. So sometimes I know it can be confusing. Beth McMahon did an amazing presentation on this. And she also created within a Google Doc, a nice little guide for you that talks about all the types of data you have available that we collect for you and some of the types of reports that you can run. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that here, but know that all that is available and it's linked in the takeaway sheet for this presentation. So with QM data, you can run tallies, simple counts. You can also do some reports, and it's downloadable in a variety of formats. So for example, you can download it as an Excel spreadsheet, a comma delimited file, and then you could run additional analyses with that. So let's jump into some sample questions that you can run using QM data. So these are just exploratory questions. So let's say, for example, that you have, especially since the pandemic, you really engaged, or your institution has, in a lot of professional development. Maybe you've had some virtual APP QMRs, for example, or designing your online course, and a lot of faculty have been engaging with this PD. Well, at your institution, maybe it's also part of your strategy and part of your goals to really have some QM certified courses moving forward. So you want to see, well, we're engaging in all this professional development. Does that make a difference in terms of course reviews? So maybe if faculty learn more and they develop more confidence about how to design their courses, they might be more apt to put them up for review. I don't know the answer to that, but it's something we can explore. So you may want to know this to see if there is that positive influence, and also, explore ideas like, is there an impact for the professional development just beyond that workshop? Because that also, for example, can demonstrate to administration that, yes, we're asking faculty to invest our time, we're investing, we have a financial investment here, but the benefits pay off after the workshop is over in these other ways. So in that case, it's a very simple correlation to run. And this is one of the examples that James is going to show us in a minute. But first, I'm going to go through two more questions. Let's say that you're trying to explore the relationship between faculty who are peer reviewers, so they've taken that certified peer reviewer course, and then faculty engagement with submitting their course review. So a very similar idea, except if you have that peer reviewer role, traditionally, you've had more professional development for designing that course and ways to really evaluate whether or not that course has met QM standards. You've also probably engaged as a peer reviewer within a certified review. So you have even more exposure to things that work well and maybe things that don't work well or need some revision, because you've had the opportunity to look at other courses from the student perspective. So again, a great question to explore to see that PD impact just beyond the completion of that PRC course. And finally, we're going to look at whether or not a relationship exists between participating as a course reviewer and engagement with submitting a course for review. So this is about those peer reviewers and those master reviewers that actually engage in that capacity and in that role in a certified official review. So again, they have more exposure then to not just professional development, but collaborating with colleagues across the United States, including that course rep, to really get a more full picture for ways to really design that course to meet QM standards. So you can see additional benefits to participating in a review. And again, that is a simple correlation. So James and I are going to hope that this works. I'm going to stop sharing now, and I'm going to turn the controls over to him. He's going to show you some things in Intellectus, and then he's going to continue on with the slides.
Great. You can see my screen okay?
Yep, perfect.
Okay. So, Intellectus is a web-based program, so it's easily used on Macs and PCs. And I'll jump right into it, actually. So you can upload data in several formats, okay? And you can, so everything starts with a new project. And when you hit continue, you can upload data from your desktop in a CSV or SPSS or Excel file, or from a URL. If some of the data is hosted online, you could also upload it from that source in different formats, or you can enter a paste data in from any flat file. You can just paste that right in, okay? So Bethany has shared her data with me. So after the data is uploaded in the projects, you can then manage data. So you can create composite scores, change the level of measurement of the variables. So just as a quick review, so there's nominal, ordinal, and scale. Nominal is just name only, and just kind of yes, no, Republican, Democrat, green, and so forth. Scale is just a number, and then ordinal is kind of just ordered data, first, second, third, and so forth. So you can upload data easily, manage data. You can then plot data, and you can do scatter plots. Let's just try one of those out. Completed professional developments and submitted reviews, for example. And maybe we want to look at that by faculty rank. So, and you can see there's kind of a trajectory going up. So it looks like they're positively related, and we could just scoot under statistics. And I'll run this in another way as well, but you can see pretty clearly that there's a relationship between submitted course reviews and the number of completed professional development sessions, both overall and for each of the various positions, be it full-time or part-time and so forth. So several different types of plots. I guess I should mention too, that is exportable in numerous ways, including adding it to your analyses and or just to a PDF or your doc. Okay, so under the analyses, and Bethany, feel free to jump in at any point, or anyone else who has questions, feel free to jump in. Let me go back for a second and just look at what we have here. So we have completed, let's see if I can scoot this along here, completed professional development, okay, for each professor or faculty. We have course reviews, okay, participation, peer reviews, yes, no, peer reviewer, yes, no, and then submitted course reviews. And then we have different faculty types, different colleges, and then departments. Okay. All righty. So here's our plot. So under the analyses, so this just answers the kinds of questions that you may have. So, hey, I want to describe my data. Okay, I can do frequency, percentages, and means. I want to relate data so I can correlate them. I can predict different things like how many submitted reviews can be predicted from completed professional developments, for example. And I'll just run a few of those. So under descriptives, and you can see helpful scroll over, so you don't have to kind of remember what all these different things do. It kind of shares with you as you go along what that test does. And okay, so under descriptives, and let's just go ahead and we don't really need their names, but we could look at completed. We'll just look at some of these. Okay, so I've entered in some of the variables and hit calculate. What you can see is that the results kind of come out in English and pretty APA 7th edition tables, if you like that. And there's a little, so for the nominal and ordinal variables, you have frequency percentages, and it starts to drill in, hey gosh, under peer reviewer, looks like a majority of them were no. And you can see some of the narrative goes with that. So it helps start to develop your report pretty quickly. And you can see other frequency percentages. For the other kind of scale variables or continuous variables, we have means and standard deviations. Again, helpful scroll overs can help you figure out what these different terms and symbols mean. So it looks like under completed professional development, on average, there was 2. Submitted courses, almost 2. And course review participation is about a 1. All right. Now to get to Bethany's questions, which was, hey, what's the relationship among some of these variables? I could just say Pearson correlation would be the tests. And I could simply just click these in and hit confirm. So all you do in our application is select the variables for that test and then hit calculate. What the program does, and I know this is for those of you who are familiar with SAS or SPSS, you typically think output looks like that, which is what most of it is, even in Excel. It's kind of raw, uninterpreted output. Ours actually preloads some of the, well, let me just say, all the analyses are broken down into 3 pieces: introductions, assumptions, and results. And in the introduction, it's kind of, here's the test and here are the variables. In this case, we want to talk about effect sizes. That is, how important are those relationships? Okay. And then there are assumptions associated with these tests. And here, the assumption is linearity. That is, it's not curvilinear or things of that sort, like a U or an N. And then the results, I'll just scoot down to the table itself. Here we can see that when we correlate professional development and course review participation, the correlation is 0.87 and the significance is 0.001. So anything typically under 0.05 or less, we consider significant. And you can see professional development submitted and course review, professional development and submitted course reviews. You can see that's significant as well. And ditto for course review participation and submitted course reviews. So those are all highly related to each other. And in terms of interpreting that, so what the program does for all of these different tests is that it not only runs it and kind of demonstrates how to write that, or one way of writing that, but it also gives that interpretation. So here we have completed professional development courses and course review participation. Great, so that was a significant positive correlation. And then the interpretation is, as professional development courses increase, course review participation tends to increase as well. So this could be said in several ways, but at least it's given you one accurate way of interpreting that correlation. And that, so that's going to, so the rest of the narrative is for those other correlations. I guess I'll highlight quickly, if some of the assumptions are violated, we offer up and then conduct alternative tests that do not have those assumptions. And here you can still see that they're also highly related to each other. And I'll do couple of other quick things with this. So say I wanted to look at the relationship among these three, but I wanted to ask the question, hey gosh, is it really true for all different faculty ranks, for example? So that's a split by feature and just hit calculate. And now for each of the different ranks, so here's for full-time tenure track, okay? And here we can scoot down to the table and say all related. How about for adjuncts, part-time adjuncts? Scoot down to the table, all currently related. How about full-time tenure track? Let's go, it's part-time for full, okay, let me just get this here. So for full-time non-tenure track.
Yeah, we had NTTs, TTs, and part-time.
So that's all related. For full-time tenure track, all related. And then for part-time adjunct, all related. So for each of the different tracks, they are also highly related among these variables. One other thing we can ask is, does some of these variables impact or predict other variables? So we can run a regression. And Bethany, I think the most relevant outcome variable would be submitted course reviews. Would that be the?
Yes. Yep, you got it.
So we'll see if that can be predicted based on whether or not you completed professional developments courses, seminars,
yep,
and a course review participation. So do these two variables predict submitted course reviews? Hit calculate. So again, the application preloads the assumptions. It's tough to figure out what that is. You simply scroll over and you can see whether it looks more normal or not normal. Okay, it looks a little sketchy there. Ditto for homoscedasticity. Again, scroll over to say, it doesn't look like that assumption is met there, okay? All right. Other assumptions, outlier analysis. And the results are kind of in plain English again. So the results of the regression were significant. Out of all of the reasons why submitted course reviews data vary, 82% of those reasons can be accounted for by the variability in completed professional development courses and in course review participation. So that's something to know. And I'm going to scoot down to the table. And here we can see the completed professional development. That variable was significant in predicting submitted course reviews. So I can see that it's positive, but what does that really mean? And again, the application gives that interpretation, which is that this indicates that every time you increase completed professional development by 1, you'll increase the value of submitted course reviews by 0.94 units. So that might be helpful in saying, hey, gosh, we want more submitted reviews. Hey, gosh, we need to have our folks add more professional development courses to get there. And in this data set, course review participation was not significant. Again, I'm not sure if the data is mock or not, but and I messed around with some of it, so it may not be
this is real data for one of our star institutions.
I messed around with some of it though, so I played around with some.
Okay.
So don't hold this, but at least it shows you how to look at those two variables predicting submitted course reviews. Okay, with an interpretation, and then when you go to export it, I always say I came from a place where I used to have punch cards. We used to wait in line with punch cards.
I remember the punch cards, James.
And so with rubber band, and
Yeah.
then the output was like this and a dot matrix. It was a
Mhm.
mess. And still the formatting of lots of the output is still kind of messy. Here you just go to download document. And in that downloaded document, it downloads into an editable Word document. So here are the things that we just did. Here's our plot. And here's our descriptives and some narrative around it. And then you just go in and edit it from that rather than having a generator from that raw output. And our correlations. And it goes down through the other correlations we ran. And just scoot down to the regression. So here's our regression, our plots. I don't know if you all would put plots into your reports or not, but you may want to
Probably
at
not.
least,
Yeah.
probably not, but you probably want to look at those plots just to make sure that the analysis is the accurate analysis and that it's interpreted in a way that is replicable. But at least you'll know, hey, gosh, what's going on with participant 476? They may be an outlier, which identifies that case to be.
And that's important to know too.
Sure, particularly in regressions. So, and then everything is referenced. Again, probably don't need those. Glossary may or may not be helpful to you. So for each of the tests that were conducted, just a little glossary of terms and symbols about what's in the write-up. The other things I want to highlight are that there are how-to videos built in. So, so if you want to figure out how to upload data or enter data, you can do that. Or, how to do different plots, how to conduct descriptives, how to conduct a Pearson, and so forth. There are also help menus built in. I think this is really the kind of distinguishing features compared to the other programs. They don't really offer you lots of help. So they have scroll overs that are helpful. You need to do that correctly. And then the videos, there's also help menus built in. So we have different topics bucketed that you can click on, you can search for. For those of you that want special kinds of analyses, you can get tech support and just start a ticket and ask us to, hey, we really want to see this feature in there. The other kind of cool thing about it is the way that we even share and collaborate together. Typically, Bethany, if you and I are sharing a project, I'm going to send you an email. I'm going to attach my data file, my Word document, send it to you. It's kind of static. You open it up on those platforms, make the edits, change it, come back. Here, you simply just click on the share feature, type in my email address or your email address. That document goes to you live. So now if you get rid of an outlier, change the analyses, that shows up resident on my side immediately. The other last quick thing I'll mention is that for those of you that are kind of saying, well, I'm not sure what analysis or how to set up the data, we offer consulting sessions every day of the week at different time zones. They're group consulting. We limit it to 6, but just know that there's support there as well. So I think I'll just stop there.
Fantastic. Okay, so I see a lot of good comments in the chat.
Oh,
Rhonda,
okay,
I
so
felt like
yeah,
you.
I
Yeah.
should be looking at those. Should I be looking at those? Yes.
I don't think that we have any remaining questions.
Okay.
Renee is asking about Jamovi. So is that what you're using now, Renee? And I'll give you a chance to type that in, but yes, okay. So in the meantime, Rhonda, my reaction was just like yours when I first saw this, that this is amazing. So a couple things that I wanted to highlight here. First of all, we started with QM QM data that QMCs have access to, because even if you don't have a research background, you've never taken a statistics class, I know that most of our QMCs are still tasked with showing stakeholders, showing their administration that, you know, we're asking faculty to invest their time wisely because these are some of the payoffs. So we specifically selected data that I knew that you had access to. And what James showed you today are analyses that are actually pretty darn simple to run, that if you don't have a good stats background, that's okay. Most everybody really can do those very simple correlations, even to see, is there a relationship between those two things? Is it a positive relationship? And then James also showed you how to run a very simple linear regression as well. Those things I think are pretty understandable, even if this was a little over your head right now. Definitely it's something that, you know, especially with those consulting sessions that Intellectus has, these are things where you can start working with your data. You don't have to be a researcher, but you do want to look into the efficacy of your quality assurance implementation. So this is one really nice, easy way to do it. For those of you that are, you know, my faculty researchers and you do put out a lot of publications, I hope that you had a big smile on your face when you saw that this spits out your results section. You have nicely formatted tables, and the time savings that has, hopefully that will appeal to you. So again, you know, this really is a special session. This isn't like we're just holding it for this vendor. I actually really like Intellectus, and it really was the best fit for us. It was pretty much the only option because, you know, we have a very small research department. We don't need SPSS capabilities or cost. It also, as James showed you, allows that easy file sharing. So our host Lee, when we share files, now we can share files pretty easily between the two of us. And I'm just going to check the chat here before we move on to see if there's questions. Deirdre, on the site, which is linked in the takeaway sheet, it has the different pricing plans. I know that educational pricing for faculty institutions is a little bit different. So maybe, James, you can talk about that at the end if we have time. Do students have access to the full text content you have reviewed? So if I'm understanding you right, Garen, you're essentially asking if you have students in a class use this, you don't want them maybe to just have that report spit out, because part of the process of learning how to do statistical analyses and write it out is knowing what's supposed to go into that report and knowing how to write it. Okay, so that is a good question, James. If I'm using this for my stats students, do I have the option of essentially saying, no, you can't do the nice auto-generated report?
So we do not have that option. So we have published everything with Turnitin. So that sentence right
Okay.
there is,
Okay.
and many other sentences are published with Turnitin, aside from the variable names and the numbers. So you must put it in your own voice. I do hear that often enough that, hey, gosh, I don't trust my students not to put it in there. What we want to do is make sure that they have thoroughly analyzed their data, like looked at the assumptions, and we want to get them on that right road, but they need to walk that road, understand it, and put it in their own voice for sure. So that's an essential portion of it.
And I'm replying to you in the chat,
So,
Renee, as well.
and we're really coming from, you know, how do I learn the program, SPSS or Stata or whatever it is, to let me start teaching about statistics, what are the correct tests, and get the answers to my questions at hand. Like, what's the relationship between two variables, or does this variable impact that variable? So that's the essence of it, in a user-friendly manner, without having to be, you know, climb a steep learning curve to figure out
Right.
just where is this plot, where is, you know, just
Yes.
Googling around and relying on kind of other people's YouTube videos to kind of figure out how to navigate.
Right.
For again, it's for non-statisticians, so, or computer science folks. If you're a doctorate in computer science or stats, you'll be using R, and you'll be
Right.
happy with that. But for lots of other folks, it's helpful.
Okay. All right, James, let's jump back into the slides.
Okay, so I will.
Unless you want me to take sharing back.
Nope, nope, I'm good.
Okay. All right.
So let me just
So the next thing that we're going to talk about is institutional data. So reporting those results, keep in mind too that interpretation is the other half of that coin. So you can collect your data, you can analyze your data, but what is really vital is the knowledge that you have to appropriately interpret that. One of the sessions that I have linked in the takeaway handout, data-driven decision making, it really is about that interpretation. So I don't want to waste our time today since, we really do want to get back into the analysis a little bit, but think in terms of what questions you want to answer. And then if something, if you get that report spit out and you're like, well, this doesn't make sense, that's where your knowledge as the QMC or as the individual faculty or as the instructional designer really can be brought to bear to appropriately interpret and figure out what's going on there. It gives you the opportunity to connect your implementation plan and goals with the moves that you're making to advance that implementation plan, right? So we know that this is something that's very typical at higher education institutions. We do have these projects, we do have plans and goals that end with, by this year we want to get here, we're investing this amount, or we're going to ask faculty to invest their time. And you do want to kind of, take the temperature there and say, well, how are we doing towards those goals? Doing some very simple data analysis like we showed you today, even with just correlations and regressions, which again, especially with Intellectus and that help that's available there is doable for you. That's what can really show whether or not you're making the progress that you want to have. And then again, if you have those positive correlations, those are things that you do want to share with faculty and administrators especially. I mean, faculty right now, and go ahead and give me a yes in the chat if you are an overwhelmed, overworked faculty. You're teaching in the 3 modalities we knew of, plus the 2 that arose since spring 2020, right? So, I worked in faculty development for many, many years. I know how busy faculty are. I'm a former faculty member myself. And if I'm asking somebody to spend their precious time in a workshop, I also want to be able to tell them it's not just about this single session, right? It's not just about the synchronous live session or an asynchronous one that's multiple weeks. It's going to pay off in these other ways beyond the topic of this workshop, right? So that they know that they are getting dividends from that time investment. Let's go on to the next slide, please.
Page down.
Okay, so now we're going to look at analyzing QM data with your institutional data. So the data that we provided for James was actual data from, one of our high implementing institutions, but then we also created some fake data to go with it. So QM data collects things like you have the individual report that shows you so-and-so took the APP QMR. Or I could run a report saying, tell me how many individual people at my institution completed the Applying the Quality Matters rubric workshop. So QM collects data that's about your QM data, right? Institutional data, though, we do not collect that. So your individual institutional members within QM, for example, we don't know what their faculty rank is. You, though, do have that information at your institution. So this section is really about taking the data that QM collects for you, combining that with some of your institutional data, some of which you probably have, some of which you might collect. So let's go on to the next slide and talk a little bit about some of the institutional data that we might have. So for example, you might have demographic information. Just about your faculty or those that are attending workshops, faculty teaching online. You might also be doing institutional professional development in quality matters. And of course, that would not be data that QM has in our system. That would be data that you're keeping. If you are doing internal and formal institutional reviews, but you're not using the course review management system, the CRMS, you're using something homegrown at your institution, you would have that data, QM would not. But you may want to look at, for example, the correlation between your informal institutional reviews and then QM certified reviews. So you could marry those 2 pieces of data. Other things that you might have or that you might want to collect, let's say, for example, you're really trying to increase faculty knowledge about different aspects of course design or online teaching. And let's say that you have that institutional PD. Around those topics. You might do a before and after sort of knowledge check just to see if knowledge increases. You might do some checks with your faculty for self-efficacy. So after I completed a QM workshop or after I served as a peer reviewer, did my self-efficacy increase for online course design or online teaching? So that's some of the individual pieces of data maybe that you can collect or want to collect additionally at your institution. So consider what you need to know. Consider your stakeholders. What do they want to know? Because you can also begin collecting new data that really corresponds and buttresses up with the data that QM collects for you. Let's go on to the next slide, please. So exploratory question, and I think James, you talked about this a little bit. Let's say that I'm at an institution, so I'm going to, in my mind right now, I'm picturing my former institution, and it was a university that had various colleges. Within those colleges, we had various departments. And within those colleges and departments, we had very different levels of QM involvement, because in some cases that college might have a fully online graduate degree program, and they really wanted all those courses certified. That was going to roll into their marketing plan for that, let's say. And let's say we had another college where maybe they had some online courses sporadically here and there, but they didn't have a fully online degree program. So they might have 1 or 2 course reviews, but maybe they're just getting started with online. So if you're at an institution that maybe is not all in one place, and you have some faculty or some departments, really moving forward with online learning and really elevating that quality, and other ones that maybe are just getting started, you might want to explore that doing some simple analyses. James also gave you the example of faculty rank. So I know when I was in faculty development, we would have to offer sessions in different ways and different times for our adjunct faculty. A lot of our adjunct faculty were not, they did not live close to campus. They were, a purely online instructor. So we would have to offer it at different times. A lot of them had 2nd or 3rd jobs. So that was something also, that told me, gosh, looking at the portrait of my data, I see a lot of our NTTs have taken workshops on online design and teaching, but we haven't yet reached enough of our adjuncts. Let's figure out why, what's not working for them. Maybe we need to hold it at a different time or in a different way. So exploring questions like this and marrying up your QM data with your institutional data can really allow you to see different levels of involvement across the institution, and that could allow you more targeted opportunities for your QM implementation. Again, you can also look at different faculty groups. Maybe they need something different, or they need maybe an advanced session of something. So that can also kind of help you tease that out as well. And again, at the end of the day, it helps to provide more targeted data to administrators. So James, I don't know if you wanted to go back in, or I think that you did explore that a little bit, but if you have something set up, please go ahead.
Sure. How much time do we have?
I'm going to do a time check-in. We have 4 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Why don't we just pass it and go back to the other? So yeah, okay. I think it's okay.
Okay.
So from current slide. So yeah.
That's also why I was thankful that you wove that into the previous one. So I think we are pretty good on time. So again, the slides and the takeaway handout with all the separate links are loaded up for you in the website. If you do have additional questions or comments about Intellectus, please reach out to Dr. Lani, not to myself, because I won't be able to help you. But if you are in that group where you're a QMC and this is a little bit new to you, you hadn't thought about really doing some basic analyses for your data, I encourage you to reach out to James and say, can I have a little consult session? Here's the data that I'm working with. Here's some of the questions that I'm trying to answer. Is that doable, for you as an individual? If you are,
trials.
Yeah.
Yes. If I could of course, just say, hey, you know what? I'd like to check it out for myself. We do sessions on Tuesdays to kind of review it, but you can get free trials and so forth. So yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. And
email along.
And so they can, on the takeaway handout also, James has provided his email. It's on here as well. So you do have the opportunity to have a free trial, to have a consulting session. And I know that we also have a Q&A question here. Will QM offer workshops on how to use data? How to collect data, how to model the right type of question for creating good research. Really good question. I think some of your questions can be answered by reviewing that data-driven presentation that I've linked in the takeaway handout. That was focused on some of the good or the right questions that you do want to ask. In terms of data collection, for the most part, it really does go back to some of the things that you are being asked, maybe from administrators or other stakeholders. We did demonstrate, I think, some of the most common questions today, but this is also an opportunity for you if you're dealing with a particular situation at your institution, or maybe your administrators asked you a question and you're not really sure how to get that data or how to analyze the data you have to get that answer. Please feel free to email either me or, better yet, research@qualitymatters.org, and we can follow up with you. And that way you can have an answer that's very specific for your institution and your situation. I'm checking the chat. I don't have access to the Q&A, I don't think, right now. So Lee, do we have any other questions left in the Q&A, or any other questions that James or I could answer for any of you?
I do not see any.
For all of my stats geeks, were you excited to see that report just spit out like that? Yes, okay, all right, that's what I wanted to hear, yes. So for those of you that have it down pat, you know what's supposed to go in that report. But every time, if you're like me, when it gets to that portion of, writing your publications and whatnot, you're like, oh my gosh, do I have to? And you're with the parentheses and everything and writing in the formulas. This is such a time saver. I mean, I feel like it took a whole headache of mine away. So, I mean, obviously you can tell that I'm just personally excited about it. I really do love this software. Otherwise, I would not have asked James to join today. So hopefully that helps. Obviously, if you're using SPSS or SAS or something, you can run everything that we showed today on yours, but hopefully we've also given you some insight into how to use QM data, how to maybe collect some new institutional data or marry it up with institutional data that you have to really get some good data-driven answers for, are we moving forward and trying to, meeting our goals in that sense. So wonderful. Okay. Yes. So Megan, you're like, that's right. So one of the things I really wanted to do when I came on to QM as the Director of Research and Innovation is, I think research is for everybody. It belongs to everybody. And I'd like to see more people doing it. So I want to remove those barriers for anybody that thinks research is not for me. I can't do it. I don't know how to ask the questions. I don't know how to design it. We got you, right? This is also one way that we can support you with software like this, so that you don't have to be a statistician, you don't have to be a stats expert or have that background. This provides options for everybody. So hopefully that does help, especially my dear QMCs. All right, so with that, Lee, you can go ahead and stop the recording. I want to thank everybody so much for attending, not just this